The United Kingdom was at war with Germany and the Axis powers. It was a time of great upheaval. Men, women, and children experienced extreme hardship and suffering in one form or another. Few escaped the harsh conditions of wartime life. The country was bombed, including the threat of gas attacks. Famine was a real threat, and food rationing began in 1940. Rations were introduced for meat, sugar, butter, cheese, eggs, and even clothing. Over 1 million children were evacuated from cities and forced to adjust to being separated from their families and friends. London was bombed for 57 consecutive nights, and other major cities and ports were subjected to massive raids. Women and children aged 14 to 17 were fully engaged in labor, many of them replacing men who had gone to the front. Children who reached the age of 18 were called up for military service, boys into the armed forces, and girls into the women's auxiliary services, the army, or other important war work, including mechanics, engineering, and munitions production. My name is Sally Thatcher, and I am the proud owner of our family farm. Like most other farmers, my husband Robert went to war. At 29, I was a healthy and very strong woman with a face tanned from long hours of working outdoors. My long, curly red hair was usually tied back and often covered with a scarf to keep it out of the way. After Robert left, we had little contact. He sent me only a few short letters, and I hoped that my letters reached him, but I couldn't be sure. Then I received the terrible news, a telegram saying that he had gone missing somewhere in Burma. That was almost 3 years ago. The chances of survival were slim. At best, Robert would end up a prisoner of war in some insect-infested hole. I was exhausted from working on the farm. Without the help of the girls from the Land Corps, it would have been impossible. 4 young women were living with me. They had been helping me since spring, and planned to stay at least until harvest time. The girls persuaded me to take them to the weekly dance in the village hall. I gladly agreed, as they had very little else to do. When we arrived, I looked around. As usual, it was full of women and there were no men in sight. They were all at war, fighting all over the world. As a result, we women danced with each other, trying to look cheerful. I danced with the butcher's wife, Thelma Swale, who was a butcher in those days because her husband was also in the merchant navy. It wasn't an unpleasant experience, in fact. The touch of Thelma's large breasts against mine was definitely pleasant. God, I really hadn't had sex in too long. At that moment, there was a commotion as American soldiers arrived. They were polite and waited quietly at the door, asking if they could come in and dance. 4 of them came in, thanked us for the cider, and sat down at the table. Soon they started asking the women to dance, and to my surprise, they asked me too. I hadn't been in a man's arms for so long that I was a little confused, as if I had almost forgotten how to behave. They danced with different women, and most of them seemed to be charmed by the young, handsome men. I saw one of the guys dancing with Marie, one of my girls from the Earth Army. She was only 17 and seemed completely enchanted by the dashing American captain. I believed this could cause all sorts of problems, so I decided to intervene politely and told Marie that she should check on her sick grandmother. She left, a little annoyed. Her dance partner, the captain, smiled at me and took my hand. "So, are you the protector of all young women or just Marie?" "She works for me and she's only 17. I know her mother, and she would never forgive me if anything happened to her while she was under my care." "I understand. You know it was innocent. I saw her standing on the sidelines, desperately waiting for one of the guys to ask her to dance. I believed it would be nice for her. She could tell her friends about it, but it wouldn't have gone any further." Damn, I jumped to conclusions. "I'm sorry, I was probably being too protective and assumed the worst about me. Don't worry. I understand your concern. Anyway, I ended up dancing with the most beautiful girl in the room, and more importantly, she's my age. God, you Americans are so smooth. Aren't you embarrassed when you throw out all those meaningless compliments? Women aren't fooled by that." You'd be surprised what women are fooled by. Yeah, and then you swear eternal love. More like passion. Good old honest passion, however long we have left. It was just a phrase, but it struck a chord with me. Who knows how long we have left? It seemed that the tide of war had turned, but air raids continued regularly, exacerbated by flying bombs. Who would have believed that unmanned missiles could be launched from another country? By the way, I'm Andy at your service, and you are Sally Thatcher. Good thing you said your name twice, huh? Well, Sally Thatcher, it's very nice to meet you. We danced one dance, then another, and then another woman asked us to let her have a turn, and I couldn't refuse. The soldiers left an hour later, promising to return the following week. Some of the women were pleased with this idea, while others frowned disapprovingly. They did indeed return, and not just them, but a whole truckload of soldiers. They asked permission again and were allowed in. The atmosphere improved, they were full of energy and joking. The dancing became more energetic and fun, and we all had a great time. For some reason, I became the object of attention of two different men, Andy and a young infantryman named Jake. I guess I was easy prey because I was a widow, and most of the other women were still in some kind of relationship with their husbands. Their visits to the weekly dances became regular. After a few weeks, Andy offered me a pair of nylon stockings. How much will they cost me? Nothing if I can watch you put them on. I believed that nylon stockings were impossible to get in those days, and I was tired of staining my legs with old tea bags and drawing a line with a pencil to imitate the seam. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I don't have any garters, so I can't try them on. Andy laughed. Well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. I'll agree to a kiss, but only a real one. Damn it, okay. Meet me in the back in a couple of minutes. I was very nervous, but I smiled when he approached. I panicked and quickly kissed him. It all started innocently. He laughed and gave me the stockings. I can't wait to see you in them next week. Promise you'll wear them. Maybe you'll have to wait and see. I already knew the answer would be yes, but I decided to push it. Sure, if you bring me some sugar so I can bake a real cake, I might try. As we turned to go back into the house, I caught a glimpse of Mrs. Jenkins kneeling in front of the soldier. Whatever she was doing, he was clearly enjoying it. Andy noticed them too and exhaled. God, you got off easy. Or you picked the wrong woman. No, I'm sure I picked the right one. You're the most attractive woman here and you're sweet. What will a bunch of provisions get me? I looked back at Mrs. Jenkins. I'm not sure I can do it. Listen, instead of you going over there, maybe I'll go. I don't understand what you mean. Oh, poor thing. You've never been kissed before. I felt myself blushing. Well, no, I mean, it's not right, is it? Oh, trust me, it's very right and very erotic. Don't tell me you've never felt satisfaction. I didn't quite understand what it was, and I felt even more awkward. Maybe I was missing something like Andy believed. After all, I was married. I should know more than him. That night I couldn't sleep and dreamed about what it would be like to be kissed. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. Then I remembered what Mrs. had done. God, how I missed male company. After what seemed like an eternity, it was suddenly over. Victory in Europe Day, VE Day, arrived, and celebrations began everywhere. The girls from the land army quickly got dressed and left the farm. As always, the village celebrations took place in the hall. Everyone dressed up and celebrated. It was the best night of our lives. The feeling of relief was overwhelming. We couldn't believe that it was really over, and that we had survived. Soldiers appeared and asked the women if we wanted to go dancing in town. When we explained that we had no money, they said they would treat us. 12 of us decided to go, and the guys were thrilled. I insisted that Marie and Jenny not go. They were too young, but 2 other girls joined us. We jumped into the trucks and had to squeeze together or sit on our knees. Andy put me on his lap, hugged me and held me close, wrapping his arm around my knee and holding the stockings he had given me in his hand. We had a wonderful night, dancing and getting drunk. The women weren't used to strong drink yet, and many bars were men only, although the war had changed a lot. Most of us were in our 20s and 30s, although the mayor's wife, Mrs. Roberts, was well over 40, though she didn't look her age. We spun around the dance floor, our dresses fluttering, revealing stockings and garters. No one paid any attention. If there was ever a night to let loose, this was it. Alcohol flowed freely, and it seemed like everyone was kissing and hugging. There were no rules. Everyone was too excited or drunk to notice or care how others were behaving. I danced with dozens of men and had a wonderful time. A few hours later, we jumped back into the trucks. Jake managed to grab me just before Andy did. Now all the women were sitting on their knees. There was even more touching and kissing in the truck. The truck stopped, we got out, and saw an empty field hospital. It was equipped to receive the wounded but had never been used. The guys insisted that we continue the party. There was a gramophone and alcohol inside. It was obvious that they had a different kind of party in mind, and I, like the other women, didn't mind. Most of us were older than our young lovers, although I was concerned that there were more men than women. The dancing quickly became heated, and every guy I danced with groped me. I saw Mrs. Featherstone being led to a soldier's cot. That broke down all barriers. Like several others, I was led to another cot. Andy and Jake followed us. We sat down on the bed, and he started kissing me and soon unbuttoned my blouse. I turned and saw Jake sitting on the other side. He leaned over to kiss me too. My God, what am I doing? Kissing two men. I looked up and saw similar scenes all over the room. It was a real party. 12 village women and maybe 20 young, fit soldiers. My friends were doing the same thing I was, and it made me feel normal. When the party finally ended, it was almost dawn, and all the women looked guilty. We got dressed, my precious stockings ruined. I saw some of the others pulling theirs up to secure them before putting on their dresses. The night had been so intense, but luckily, I was left alone with Jake and Andy. One of the trucks took us home. We agreed never to mention our night out of time. It was a unique experience, and we returned to our lives as conservative country women. We got out of the truck with red faces and a sense of shame and walked the walk of shame to our homes. The following week, the soldiers came to the village club. The other women and I were confused, and many refused offers to dance. I danced with Jake and Andy, but asked them to behave themselves. We didn't want anyone to guess what had happened, especially since several husbands had already returned home from their service. I tried to see the situation through my husband's eyes. It was obvious that the soldiers knew their wives. Now they were asking questions. I heard Thelma denying everything and trying to block out her memories. Then Barry Carruthers suddenly dragged his wife home, hoping it would be sex rather than accusations. It could have ended in disaster, so I asked Andy to send all the soldiers home early. A few months later, I received a telegram saying that Robert was alive. I read it over and over again. Could it be true? I couldn't allow myself to believe it and get my hopes up. The telegram said he had been found in a Japanese prisoner of war camp and was returning to the UK. It was a miracle. I desperately wanted to see him and started worrying again. Was he all right? What had happened to him? The stories about the camps in Asia were horrific. Waiting for him to return seemed even longer than the war itself. Finally, I met him at the port. Many of the men who disembarked were thin, with eyes bulging from hunger. Then I saw him and cried. He was so emaciated that I hugged him gently, afraid of hurting him. He hugged me with surprising strength. He noticed my anxiety and assured me that he had already started to gain weight. His body had changed, but his eyes remained the same, full of love and devotion, just like mine. The first few weeks were devoted entirely to caring for him. I wanted to confess and try to be honest with him, but I had to wait until he was stronger. Several months passed before I finally gathered the courage. "Robert, I need to talk to you about something important. Can we?" "Sure," he said, turning toward me on the couch and looking at me expectantly. I took a deep breath. "You know I love you and always will." "Why should I believe you won't love me forever?" "Because I did something really terrible." I sighed and he held his breath. "I cheated on you on Victory Day." "What the hell? No, that can't be. With whom?" "With an American soldier." "I'm sorry. We were all drinking and excited that the war was finally over. It was just that one night. Nothing serious." "It may have been over for you, but not for us. The Japanese were still fighting." "I'm sorry. I convinced myself that a few drinks wouldn't hurt and neither would dancing. Then we started kissing and he kissed me. I've been faithful to you all these years and wasn't sure you were alive." "How far did you go?" "We had sex. Several times. I'd rather not go into details. It doesn't show me in the best light." I couldn't mention both men. He would think I was a complete slut. Maybe I'll tell him later if he insists on details. I was so lonely and it felt good to be part of something. And then to get attention after being stuck on a farm. Look at me. I'm just a simple farmer's wife with tanned skin and rough hands. "You're beautiful to me. You've always been beautiful." "Not anymore." I'm tainted. Fucking Yankee, overpaid, overexcited, and here he is. Where is he now? He was sent back to the States. I'm so sorry. I hope we can forget about it. It was a moment, and it seemed like the usual rules didn't apply. It will never happen again. I feel terrible. Things were tense between us. I was waiting for the thunder to strike. I could see that Robert was trying to forgive me, trying to find a way out, but whether he could was still a question. A few months later, we were enjoying a normal evening, sitting on the couch and listening to the radio. Robert had physically recovered, almost doubling his weight since his return. I noticed him looking at me and turned to smile. I froze, realizing that he wasn't looking at me the way he used to. I tried to hold back the tears. "You never looked at me like that before. You always looked happy, even excited, to see me, but now your gaze seems more neutral." "In a way, that's true. You never forgave me, did you?" "I'm trying, Sally, I really am. I believed I had forgiven you, but I can't forget. Things aren't the same as they used to be. You were everything to me. Sometimes I forget, and sometimes these thoughts come flooding back. I can't give myself to you completely like I used to. What we have is still good. Yes, it's good, but maybe not as magical as it used to be. By the way, I know the whole story. It sounded like a fun party, a few guys, and you gave yourself to all of them." "I'm sorry. I thought the details would only hurt you. I went with 2 guys. It was so unlike me. Nothing like that had ever happened before. The night was just crazy. Looking back, I can't believe that was me." Robert sighed. "No matter how hard I try, I just can't shake the feeling that we are different now. I thought so much of you at camp and dreamed of coming back to you. My dream finally came true, but then your confession took it all away from me again." We sat in silence for several minutes. That felt like hours before I finally gathered the courage to ask the question I was so afraid to ask. "Do you want me to leave?" "No, stay. This is your farm, and you've run it without me for years. I'll leave." "Where?" "I don't know. Maybe I'll go traveling. Find work on farms around the country. I feel like I need to leave, to escape." I spoke quickly, trying not to panic. "No, please don't do this. I can't live without you. I've already lost you once. Even if you want to divorce me, please stay here. Try to find peace. I'll help you with anything I can, just as a friend if you need it. I want to do this for you, to take care of you." After that, we hugged, and I held on to him desperately, begging him not to leave. I insisted on moving into the spare bedroom, saying I would only come back when Robert wanted me to. He didn't leave, but I got the impression that he was still thinking about it. It was a difficult truce, but just friends felt like a weight had been lifted off our shoulders. It meant we could care for each other without tying everything to my actions as a wife. It also gave us both a chance to breathe before making a decision about our marriage. It got to the point where I stopped believing that he would leave me. He was often tormented by nightmares. I would hear him screaming in the middle of the night and find him huddled in the corner of the bedroom, covered in sweat. I would cool him down with wet towels and hold him until he came to. Finally, he slowly told me what the nightmares were about and some of the things that had happened in the camps: torture, death, and starvation. It was more than any human being could bear. I was the only one he ever told, and I was sure I had heard only a fraction of his personal horror story. I felt sad again that I couldn't give him the perfect reunion and peace he so deserved. I resumed my efforts to care for him, despite what had happened to us. His personality and character gradually returned. He still had periods of moodiness and would withdraw into himself from time to time. I would give him a few hours, and then I would usually find him in the upper fields or by the river. I didn't want to leave him for long because the darkness inside him only grew stronger. 6 months later, I nervously asked him, "Let's start over, okay? Forget about the woman who made the biggest mistake of her life and believe in the new woman you met after the war. Before you, she had been with 3 men, but she only truly loved one. A wonderful man whom she lost. She is a good farmer and a caring woman, and she will be completely devoted to you. Don't put yourself down, Sally. You really cared about me. I doubt I would have recovered without you. I can't thank you enough for that. It would have been easy for you to leave me." "You would have recovered without me. You are an amazingly strong person. I admire that you survived, let alone recovered. You know that your dream is still here, waiting for you. Me, the farm, the house, the future, everything. But for that to happen, it takes you and us together. That's my dream too, Robert." Robert smiled. "That's a passionate plea, Sally. I wasn't sure you still felt that way, especially when I was so broken." The road to recovery was long and difficult, but we became more than friends again. It was like a new courtship, both of us cautiously testing the waters, and I was desperate not to push Robert away. We got there in small steps. I was in a better position than many women in the village who celebrated Victory in Europe Day. 5 out of 12 were divorced, 3 were single, and 2 were widowed. Thelma Swice was the only one whose marriage remained intact, but only just. 5 years later, we both felt confident enough to start a family. Our 3 children adored their father, as did I. And then I noticed that look he gave our children again. Fortunately, I saw it more and more often in the way he looked at me. We lived a long and happy life together.